An inconvenient roof. Strasbourg is facing a resurgent campaign to stop the European Parliament using it as its once-a-month base. The objection revolves on the cost of MEPs and staff with all their kit trekking to the French city on the border with Germany from their constituencies or from their base the rest of the time in Brussels. The fed-up camp says the bill comes to some €200 million per year and a largely transport-linked tag of 19,000 tons of CO2 emissions per year. Strasbourg was made a part-time parliamentary host city as a symbol of post-war reconciliation. But since then, the European bloc of nations has enlarged greatly. The representatives who made the trip in the early days would resemble a skeleton crew next to an army of lawmakers now. The critics hope to bring the Strasbourg arrangement, even though it is bound by treaty, to an end. One of the Parliament's vice presidents, Briton Edward McMillan-Scott, is far from happy with the status quo. He has been arguing for years to recenter operations in Brussels, and he does not waste an instant before showing our correspondents supporting evidence.
This area here is now, you see buses over here. Until last month, buses used to come in here with visitors' groups. But because this is now cracking up, this surface, they're no longer allowed in here. It's one of the problems with the construction of a building. Very fast, not very good, and as you know, the ceiling in the hemicycle collapsed in 2008.
Downtime in transit also chafes as unproductive, not just for the MEPs, but for the many assistants, translators and journalists.
Mr. McMillan-Scott, did you have a good trip?
Yes, it's long and pointless, but I started this morning about 9:15 from my home in the middle of England, and now it's 5:30, although I've lost an hour because of the time change. I fly from Birmingham to Lyon, so I go south, then I fly north from Lyon to Strasbourg, and it takes about 7 hours. So that's 7 hours wasted.
But moving the Parliament away from Strasbourg would require to change the treaty, which is possible only if France agrees. What could you offer to France, or how to convince the French to accept this alternative?
I think the French would accept a democratic vote of the European Parliament when the view of the Parliament is settled. It's quite clear the way the majority thinks. But we haven't begun to look at the alternatives yet, and I think the Parliament has now got the capacity to make recommendations for treaty change. We need to look at all this. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm somebody who thinks that we should be efficient. I'm a pro-European, fundamentally, and I've been so for all my life. I want the European Parliament to succeed. I'm afraid to say it cannot succeed here in Strasbourg. This is a city of the past as far as the Parliament's concerned, and I think France and the French must understand that.
Repeated reports say a vast majority of MEPs want to let Strasbourg be bygones and stick to Brussels. Paris has referred to this as regrettable. Strasbourg Mayor Roland Ries is far from happy with talk of a Brussels-only parliament. In his eyes, this city is the European capital, bar none, for 3 days and nights per month.
Monsieur le Maire.
Why should MEPs be all that enthusiastic about having their headquarters in Strasbourg?
I think what the Euro MPs complain about the most is the shuttling between Brussels and Strasbourg. I proposed to France's junior Minister for European Affairs, Mr. Vauquier, to do away with this shuttling. To base the whole European Parliament in Strasbourg. The European treaties say quite clearly that the seat of the European Parliament is in Strasbourg. There's no reason for it not to be in Strasbourg, for not holding the meetings of the working groups in Strasbourg, holding the meetings of the political groups in Strasbourg. Therefore, get rid of the shuttling, which is such an inconvenience for the parliamentarians, and I can understand them. Let's follow the logic of the treaties all the way and regroup the Parliament in one city, but in Strasbourg.
Would the most democratic solution not be to let the MEPs decide the location of their working headquarters?
As I recall, the European Union is founded in the treaties, which have been validated today by the 27 EU countries. And I believe that this legal base does not rely on parliamentary majorities, which can vary from one electoral mandate to the next. Therefore, the treaties are the basis for the European Parliament being in Strasbourg, and it's not for the MEPs to modify them.
Mais est-ce que vous ne pensez pas
But don't you think that the symbolic resonance of Strasbourg as a city of Franco-German reconciliation is far less for the people of Ireland, Finland, Bulgaria or Portugal than for someone from France or Germany?
que pour un Français et un Allemand?
The European Union was constituted on the basis of Franco-German reconciliation, Franco-German alignment, without the British at the beginning. Today other countries are associated with this basis, this core. I rejoice over that, but one must not, after all, consider that what was extremely important at a given time, and that something which is still pivotal for European integration, can be passed up in favor of profits and losses.
Ceux parmi les
The
députés
MEPs who are against Strasbourg as the seat of Parliament are aware that the city needs an alternative. Can you see any alternative?
vous pourriez envisager une alternative?
For me, that question is not negotiable, and I believe that for the French government, the presence in Strasbourg of the European Parliament, as I recall, the only institution of the European Union on French territory, is not negotiable, and I totally approve of this position. If the European Parliament were no longer here, there'd clearly be an impact. How do the people living in Strasbourg see things? This woman says losing it would be impossible, unthinkable. You can ask any Strasbourgeois and he'll say the same. This woman says we have several institutions, the European Court and the Council of Europe. They're our heritage. Her companion says economically speaking it's important to keep the European Parliament. The city has around 150 hotels, but these days they have trouble accommodating everyone when the MEPs are in town, though more hotels are being built. Restaurants and taxis also do a thriving trade when the House meets. This hotel professional says, I don't know that prices flare up, especially in the week the Parliament is in session. If there is any abuse, there's nothing to stop customers from going to other hotels that don't raise rates. I think that's a weak argument to throw in for the European Parliament reckoning. When the hemicycle ceiling was being fixed in 2008 and 2 regularly scheduled monthly sessions were moved to Brussels, it put a 20% hole in the earnings of Strasbourg's hotel sector alone.